Since the release of the final Bendy in the Dark Revival trailer late last week, there's been a lot more information relating to the game, including new teasers, screenshots, character information, and of course, new lore. And we're going to be going over all of that in today's video. Okay, so first we have these character information posters released by the Bendy Twitter account over the course of last week. The first one depicts Audrey showing a render of her full body and giving little anecdotes about her character. The first one reads, Audrey, studio newcomer, a hardworking animator who is unwillingly pulled into the inky abyss of Bendy's cartoon world. Audrey is determined to survive, but has much to learn about the dark monsters of the studio. So I think this finally does solidify our theory that Audrey has only recently joined the inky world and is unfamiliar with the rules of the studio, having to be mentored by Alice Angel. And the next line also mentions her Bioshock-type powers, describing them as unique and mysterious. Now, going back to the first full trailer for Bendy in the Dark Revival from 2019, Audrey even seems to be confused and scared about her power, asking, "What's happening to me?" at the end of the trailer after she's able to use it for the first time. Which is another thing she could possibly seek help from Alice from. Whether to use that power for good or for evil. Whether to walk with angels or cower before demons. As she said back in an earlier trailer, also from 2019. Last two lines here are pretty obvious in what they are referring to. The terror she will face will test her in every way possible. Could be a nod to the fact that she will not only be hunted by these monsters, but tempted by them to join the side of the demons, and there is a new evil at work in the studio, and only Audrey can stop it. This is obviously referring to Wilson, and Audrey's quest to stop him. And from this and the first trailer, it definitely does seem like she has some sort of connection with him. Okay, next character, Porter, which is that Lost One character teased a while ago, and it says here that Porter is a lone survivor, and that not all Lost Ones are hell-bent on the destruction of intruders, and despite their reputation for madness and despair, Porter remains some semblance of humanity. At least for now. So it seems that unlike the other Lost Ones, which are either miserable and harmless or psychopathically aggressive, kinda like the average Gen Z male, Porter has maintained his sanity and is able to act as another guide-type character to Audrey. The second line reads, self-proclaimed adventurer and explorer. And this is an interesting one from a gameplay perspective, possibly meaning that he is the one who will give you information on where to go in the studio and lead you around the map, as he already knows the lay of the land. Now this one is super interesting. Rumor has it Porter has mysterious powers of his own, powers that may be passed on to the right individual. Cause this hints that Porter was the one who originally gave his powers to Audrey somehow. And this does check out from what we've seen so far, as she appears to not have her powers in the shots of the trailer showing her early into her journey in the studio. Last one mentions that he is accident prone and to keep an eye out. So it seems like this character may end up being kind of a liability at some point of the game, as it was mentioned in the first line that he has kept his sanity for now, which all seems to imply that Porter's character arc will be from him being very helpful to the player to eventually causing more trouble than good. Okay, one last thing that a lot of people have pointed out is that using the lens of truth in that big final boss fight with Brute Boris in the atrium area from Bendy Chapter 4 reveals Porter's name scrawled on the wall, which does seem to be consistent with his adventurous personality, having been everywhere in the studio. So perhaps he took the time to sign his name in a few of these locations. Pretty cool Easter egg though, not much else there. Alright, on to Alice Angel. She is described as a studio veteran, and her description reads, the remnants of a once sweet cartoon character, this angel has been hardened by survival and resistance in the inky depths of the studio. She has a heart for setting things right and is willing to fight for it. The description of her being a battle-hardened veteran of the studio does raise some questions about when this game is set, and if it is in fact after the events of Bendy and the Ink Machine like we have theorized. As well, she was still aware of the events taking place around her in the first game, she didn't appear to be as near as confident and knowledgeable as she is now. The next line here reads, she may have useful information for any newcomers to the studio. Listen carefully. And just outright confirms for us that Alice will be helping us navigate the studio and learning how the world works in the beginning of this game. After that, we also get confirmation that Tom Boris will be making a return in this game. So even though we haven't seen him yet, it's nice to know that he'll be making a return. Lastly, the teaser talks about her being in the center of the rebellion against evil. So it seems that part of this game is definitely going to be assembling a team of allies to go head to head with Wilson at the end of this game, Alice and Porter included. And I know a lot of people have said that these new models for Bendy in the Dark Revival look kinda bad, but I completely disagree. I mean, look at this one from Bendy and the Ink Machine. There is no comparing them. I mean, just look at the detailed ink on the arms compared to the old one, or the colors, or the textures, or the lighting, or the level of detail in general, all which are massively improved. Okay, the next piece of information is actually coming from the Meatly's Twitter account, And this one shows a picture of the new female character that we talked about in the last video, with the caption, "Her name is Betty." Now, one thing that someone actually pointed out to me, which I think is worth mentioning, is that this character design is a lot closer to an old-fashioned nurse than a nun. And the nurse thing just as well fits in with what she said. And even though there is a lot of weird stuff in Joey Drew Studios, I think from a storytelling perspective, it would make a lot more sense for the studio to have a hospital area in it than a nun convent, which is just kind of weird. Like, I don't even know why I thought of that, bro. Especially considering that Bendy Chapter 2 did have the infirmary in it. Okay, now before I move on to the rest of the teasers, I just want to let you guys know I have a Discord server now. I know. I keep talking about it, but listen. You guys better join, alright? It's already devolved into like complete chaos over there, so, you know, we kind of ballin' over there, not gonna lie. You better join, links in the description or in the pinned comment. Come on, join, please, you need to. Okay, last character info card. This one is for the big man himself, Wilson, custodian of the ink, the man who killed the ink demon. Yet his ultimate intentions are difficult to decipher. He's here to clean up the many messes left behind by Joey Drew Studios in both worlds. Okay, so most of what it says here we already knew, but I do think it's interesting to note that it says he's here to clean up the messes left by Joey Drew Studios in both worlds, which first of all suggests that he can switch between the ink-like purgatory and the real world, and second gives credence to my theory that he is someone high up in the Archgate Company, someone trying to pick up the pieces after Mr. Drew. This definitely seems to be likely, as we now have confirmation of what was hinted at in the last trailer, that he is a dictator-like figure, ruling the studio with an iron fist. Quote, striking fear into his enemies, Wilson holds dominance over the ink realm. That last line also hints at him being an omnipotent figure, who knows all the happenings at the studio, which would make sense considering, again, it seems that he can pass between the cartoon world and real world at will, not being trapped in it at all, like most of the other figures who reside in the studio. Quote, Wilson is always watching. He knows your purpose. Okay, now onto the screenshots. The first new screenshot shows a hallway with the Gent logo above it. A sign reading "Condemned" has been stuck over the logo, with the subtext of the sign reading "Effective October 31st, 1952. Now it appears that the Gent wing of the studio has been shut down, Gent being the company that did all of the internal plumbing and pipework for the installation of the ink machine. We can assume that Joey Drew has quite possibly terminated his partnership with Gent after the failure of the ink machine in the 1940s, or perhaps the Gent wing of the studio has become overrun of the ink creatures and had to be quarantined off for that reason. Possible evidence for that being the case could be the bloodied body on the table next to the entrance, wrapped in a blood-soaked sheet. Whatever the reasoning may be, it seems that something awful happened here. Okay, next screenshot. This one depicts the entrance to Animation Alley, the new animation wing of the studio that was teased all the way back in 2019. This teaser shows a sign above the hallway, again reading Animation Alley where magic is made. And if you look in the corner of the image, you can see a lost one standing in the hall, along with cutouts of Alice, Bendy, and Boris. Okay, last screenshot. This one shows a door with the words, "Don't knock."
I am the one who knocks.
You can also see the phrase, "No visitors, go away," written on an easel by the door. So whatever monster is in here has clearly gone insane and doesn't want people anywhere near it. We can also guess that whatever character is locked up in this room is probably an artist based on an easel and the paint buckets and paintbrushes scattered around the room. So we can guess that the screenshot may also be in the Animation Alley section of the game. Okay, now here's what's in my opinion the most interesting thing that the Meatly has put out in the lead up to this game. The Archive, a series of fake news articles from the world of Bendy establishing a timeline. The first one tells us that the studio started going through financial troubles in 1947, which, as we know from one of the very first teasers for Bendy and the Dark Revival featuring Thomas Connor, is about 5 years after the ink machine was installed.
We're looking at quite the job here. Walls come out, pipes go in, dang walls go back in again. It's like banging your head on a rock over and over and over.
And we have theorized in the past that the ink machine was the reason for the studio going broke, a tremendous expenditure of resources that never paid off. And this is reinforced by a line from the article which reads, "One employee who remains anonymous told the Telegram that Joey Drew doubts that the company will be able to sustain much longer. Some of the reasons given for the financial difficulties are rocketing expenses which related to what he referred to as Joey's folly. When asked for clarification, he confusingly told us he feared the machine and didn't want to comment further." The second article skips ahead to when the studio was declaring bankruptcy, and confirms that most of the debt that the studio has accumulated is in fact owed to Gent. This article isn't dated, simply saying July 29th and missing a year. However, the following article does actually give us a year as to when the studio went bankrupt, 1948. So putting those two together, we get a date of July 29th, 1948. The following article details the legacy of Bendy, and how its characters faded into obscurity following the post-war era. The article itself is also missing a date, but that isn't easy to find. One of the blurred out headlines on the newspaper clipping reads, "Remembering the Titanic, 50 years since the sinking," which would put the article at April 14th, 1962, which, coincidentally enough, is the same date that has appeared a ton throughout the Bendy universe, and seems to be really important. The last article is from February 10th, 1972. This one goes on to confirm that Joey Drew Studios was in fact purchased by Archgate Pictures, and ran by a man named Nathan Arch, who was previously an oil and steel baron. So probably some sort of big billionaire Elon Musk, I'm going to buy Twitter type of guy. And this does kind of throw out my past theory about Wilson being the new CEO after Joey Drew's death, which from the way Nathan Arch talks about him in this article, it definitely does seem like Joey Drew is dead here. So will Wilson be some sort of high-level manager sent in to look over the studio specifically, like Nathan Arch's right-hand man or something? We just don't know. Okay, last thing, then we're almost done here, I swear, is the Steam page. Bendy the Dark Revival got posted to Steam at last, and the description on said Steam page reads, "Bendy the Dark Revival, trademark, is a first-person survival horror game, and the much-anticipated sequel to Bendy the Ink Machine, trademark. Play as Audrey as she explores the depths of a curiously creepy animation studio that's gone completely mad. Combat ink-tainted enemies, solve puzzles, and evade the ever-lurking ink demon while seeking your way back to the real world. You never know what is going to be going on around the next corner in this dilapidated realm of shadows and ink. Discover the truth, escape the studio, and above all, fear the ink demon and survive. First-person survival horror and the much-anticipated sequel to Bendy the Ink Machine, trademark. Earn powerful new abilities to help you in your escape. Solve environmental puzzles, ally with beloved cartoon characters, and elude the horror of the ink demon. And finally, discover the terrifying secrets of the creepy rubber hose cartoon world of Joey Drew Studios, trademark." Now, the description of this game is pretty standard. It does mention a few interesting things, like the allusion to the fact that we might get to collect multiple abilities to use. And from the main part of the description, it does seem like we are going to be navigating a truly abandoned studio. A place where everyone has completely lost their minds and is out to get you. Then we also got a few screenshots that weren't in the original trailer. You got the city area, which looks incredibly detailed and just shows the true scale of the studio. You got this one giving a closer look to the Lost Ones and confirming that the elevator will be a returning mechanic in this game. Ugh. Next we get to see Audrey's desk at the studio, displaying an Employee of the Month poster, and curiously enough, the exact same poster of Bendy, Alice, and Boris from the end of Bendy and the Ink Machine, where we hear a little girl's voice say, "Tell me another one, Uncle Joey."
Tell me another one, Uncle Joey.
So this begs the question, did they just reuse an asset here? Or could Audrey possibly be the niece of Joey Drew that we heard talk at the end of Chapter 5, all grown up? I kinda doubt it, but it's an interesting thought to entertain. Okay, last one. This one just gives us a closer look at Perfect Bendy, and I mean, come on guys, he is pretty adorable. Alright, so after 3.5 years, this is finally the last Bendy the Dark Revival video that I'm going to post before the actual game comes out. And when that does happen, I'm going to kidnap some of my friends, I'm going to play it on the channel, and then I'll do some really cool theories about it, hopefully. So you definitely don't want to miss those, so you should go and hit the subscribe button to boost the engagement and watch time and all that other stuff I pretend not to care about. And join my Discord server too, please. I think that would kind of be a good idea. Dude, it's chaos over there. Oh my god, it's terrible, but like in a good way, in a funny way, so go. Join. I see you not doing it. I know you're not doing it. Goodbye. See you in the next one.